Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye looks to drum up more international support for tough measures on North Korea as she prepares to attend the East Asia Summit in Laos. The National Assembly opens a two-day hearing into the restructuring of Korea's financially troubled shipbuilding and shipping industries. First, let the Games begin. The 2016 Paralympics get underway with a grand opening ceremony in Rio. More than 130 Korean athletes will represent their country in Brazil. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Thursday, the 8th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye is due to attend the East Asia Summit in Laos. The South Korean leader will continue to press regional leaders on the need to keep the pressure on North Korea over its nuclear and missile programs. Our Song Ji-son, who is travelling with the President, files his report from Laos.
The final stage of President Park Geun-hye's multilateral diplomacy tour takes place at the East Asia Summit. The summit includes the 10 ASEAN member nations, plus the 3 East Asian countries of Korea, China, and Japan, and the US, Russia, India, Australia, and New Zealand. President Park will refresh her call on the international community to implement the UN sanctions on North Korea, which threatened regional peace with yet another missile launch on Monday when the G20 summit was underway in China.
At the East Asia Summit, the best strategic forum in the region that's attended by the leaders of ASEAN, the US, China, Japan, and Russia, President Park will call on the world to send a strong message that North Korea's nuclear program cannot be tolerated. We must continue to cooperate to help Pyongyang make the right choice.
During her stops in Russia for the Eastern Economic Forum and in Hansa for the G20 summit, President Park stepped up the pressure on North Korea, announcing measures to beef up trilateral coordination between the US and Japan, and reinforce trilateral communication with the US and China to counter North Korea's increased nuclear and missile provocations. President Park has completed a series of bilateral talks with Russia, China, the US, and Japan on North Korean issue. The leaders will all gather at the East Asia Summit on Thursday to further discuss regional security. Song Ji-son, Arirang News, Vientiane.
President Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor says Washington may reconsider the deployment to South Korea of the controversial THAAD missile defense system if North Korea scraps its nuclear missile programs. Park Jong-hong has the details.
The United States would be willing to think twice about deploying THAAD on South Korean soil if North Korea abandoned its development of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. This is according to Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes. He made the remarks at a press conference in Laos when asked if there were any circumstances under which the missile defense system would not be deployed. Rhodes stressed the deployment is solely intended to counter North Korea's threats. But he said the U.S. hasn't seen any signs North Korea intends to change its ways in light of the regime's recent launch of 3 ballistic missiles into waters near Japan. He also said Washington would not reconsider the THAAD deployment just because China and other countries more strictly implement sanctions against the North. In addition, he pitched the need to focus more on the sanctions as North Korea may find ways to bypass them.
So we have to be very vigilant in sanctions enforcement, and we have to maintain the sense of urgency among the international community.
In the wake of Pyongyang's latest missile launches, the U.S. Special Envoy on North Korea will visit South Korea and Japan in the coming days. The State Department said Ambassador Sung Kim will meet with his counterparts from September 10th to the 13th in Tokyo and then Seoul. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
The annual Seoul Defense Dialogue has opened for a two-day run in the South Korean capital. The main topics of conversation are North Korea's nuclear program and the disputes in the South China Sea. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Seoul's Defense Dialogue 2016 kicked off on Thursday with military leaders from 33 countries and 5 international organizations taking part. Topping the agenda will be regional and international security issues involving North Korea's nuclear program and maritime disputes among the U.S., China, and Japan. The first plenary session on Thursday focuses on the denuclearization of North Korea and how to enhance international cooperation on the issue. The participants will assess North Korea's growing nuclear threats, UN Security Council resolutions on Pyongyang's nuclear program, and how the framework of the Iranian nuclear deal could be applied to the regime. Also on Thursday, South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu is scheduled to hold talks with the chief of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons to discuss cooperative measures to prevent Pyongyang's possible use of chemical and biological weapons. On Friday, the final day, the plenary session will focus on maritime security cooperation, discussing crisis management on the South China Sea issues. However, Beijing is not taking part in the forum this year as a protest against Seoul's recent decision to deploy the U.S. Advanced Missile Defense System, THAAD, to the peninsula. China argues that THAAD's radar will harm regional security and that it could be used to spy on Beijing's military. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
North Korea has rejected the UN Security Council's condemnation of its recent missile launches. Pyongyang says the press statement was the product of US manipulation. Connie Kim with the details.
The response was brisk and aggressive. Vowing to bolster its nuclear force, North Korea has lashed out at the UN Security Council over its adoption of a press statement condemning the regime's recent ballistic missile launches. A spokesman from North Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry accuses the U.S. and its followers of finding fault with the regime's self-defensive nuclear program and manipulating the press statement. Ignoring the Security Council's call to halt further provocations, the spokesman said North Korea will continue its, quote, miraculous achievements in this historic year, which Pyongyang opened with its 4th nuclear test. The official added that the UN Security Council is an unfair entity that sides with Washington as it keeps trying to block the North's legitimate efforts to protect itself. At an emergency closed-door meeting Tuesday, all 15 members of the UN Security Council, including North Korea's ally China, condemned Pyongyang's recent Nodong missile and SLBM launches, with some reportedly calling for additional North Korea sanctions. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
A 2-day parliamentary hearing has begun into the restructuring of Korea's financially troubled shipbuilding and shipping industries. The hearing has already gotten off to a rocky start, though, as one of the key witnesses, Hong Ki-taek, the former chairman of the Korea Development Bank, didn't show up. Hong attended a controversial closed-door meeting at the presidential office last year, where officials reportedly decided to use billions of dollars of taxpayer money to bail out Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, despite allegations of accounting fraud within the ailing shipper. Now, aside from this hearing, a 4-day parliamentary Q&A session with government officials will get underway on September 20th. Prosecutors investigating the bribery and slush fund scandal at Lotte Group are expected to question the group's elderly founder, Shin Gyok-ho, this afternoon. They'll visit him at Hotel Lotte in central Seoul rather than calling him to their office due to his poor health. The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office said its officials met with the 93-year-old and his doctor on Wednesday to assess his mental and physical well-being. Based on their assessment, they decided to visit Mr. Shin today at 3:30 p.m. Korea time. The prosecution has been investigating Lotte Group since early June over allegations Shin Gyok-ho evaded some $550 million in taxes in the process of handing over stocks to his family members. Prosecutors originally summoned Shin for questioning on Wednesday, but he asked the prosecutors to visit him instead, citing health issues. The Bank of Korea is expected to keep its benchmark interest rate at a record low on Friday when its Monetary Policy Committee holds its monthly meeting. A survey of 200 bond traders by the Korea Financial Investment Association showed 96% of respondents predict no change from the current 1.25%. That's attributed both to mounting household debt in Korea and the possibility of a rate hike by the US Federal Reserve when it meets in 2 weeks. Chances of the Fed raising rates this month, according to Wall Street analysts, have dropped to less than 20%. Now, US presidential candidate Donald Trump's recent visit to Mexico appears to have helped him in the polls, but it's backfired for at least one Mexican politician. The country's finance minister has resigned. Kim Jung-soo has more on that and the race for the White House.
Mexico's finance minister Luis Videgaray has resigned from his position just a week after Republican nominee Donald Trump made a surprise visit to Mexico City. The former minister had served as one of President Enrique Peña Nieto's closest aides, and it is also rumored that he was the mastermind behind Trump's visit. The Wall Street Journal cites a person close to the Mexican government who says Videgaray encouraged the president to invite Trump to ease tensions in Mexico's financial market, as the Republican candidate's past rhetoric regarding immigration had aggravated Mexican investors. But the visit did not go according to plan. Trump sparked controversy once again at a joint press conference right after meeting the president. He had said the United States had an undeniable right to build a wall along the Mexican border to stop unauthorized immigration and the inflow of illegal weapons and narcotics. So far, Videgaray's office has denied the visit was his idea, and Peña Nieto himself has said he was responsible for the invitation. Meanwhile, on Wednesday night, Donald Trump faced off with his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton, albeit indirectly at a televised Commander-in-Chief forum in New York. The candidates answered questions on national security, most of them asked by war veterans and current service members. And with the presidential election just 2 months away, the latest polls show Hillary Clinton's lead has shrunk over the past couple of weeks. On Wednesday, Real Clear Politics average of polls show Clinton with 46.2% and Trump at 42.9%. A CNN poll released Tuesday had Trump with a 2% lead. Kim Jung-soo, Arirang News.
Now, the 2016 Paralympics have officially opened in Rio. The opening ceremony concluded just a couple of hours ago, but concerns over low ticket sales continue to cast a dark shadow over proceedings. Kwon Jang-ho has this report.
The 2016 Paralympics have begun. 18 days after the Olympics closed in Rio, the Maracanã Stadium Wednesday night was once again filled with samba music, colourful dances and elaborate fireworks, as well as some incredible somersaulting stunts by a wheelchair athlete. Over the next 11 days, 4,300 athletes from 159 countries will be competing in 23 Paralympic sports. That includes the 139 competitors from South Korea who've set a target of 12 gold medals and a top 10 finish. There are also 2 athletes representing North Korea, as well as 2 members of the refugee team competing under the Olympic flag. But as with last month's Olympics, empty seats and low ticket sales are again a big concern. The organisers have said a late upsurge in interest is expected to lead to tickets selling out, but with about 1 million of the 2.5 million tickets still available on Monday, that could likely be optimistic. Drastically reduced budgets and a shortage of volunteers threaten to disrupt the events as well. But it's hoped that, much like the Olympics last month, once the Games begin, the focus will be on athletic achievement and not the off-stage drama. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Apple has unveiled its latest iPhones, the iPhone 7 and large screen 7 Plus. The devices come with a faster processor and better camera, with the iPhone 7 Plus featuring 2 digital camera lenses, and both versions have dropped the traditional headphone jack. The phones offer twice as much storage as the iPhone 6s and are waterproof for the first time. And for the first time since 2014, Apple has updated its smartwatch, which is now equipped with GPS. Demand for the iPhone has waned in recent months, but the device continues to be the biggest source of revenue for Apple, which has sold over 1 billion of them since the iPhone was launched in 2007. The new iPhones will debut on September 16th in the US and 24 other countries, including Korea, in mid-October. Pre-orders for the iPhone 7 and Apple Watch Series 2 will start on Friday. The World Trade Organization has ruled that both the targeted dumping and the dumping margin calculation method that the United States employed in its anti-dumping investigation on Korean washing machines constituted a violation of its rules. The decision supports an initial ruling in 2012, and the WTO said the 9 to 13% of anti-dumping tariffs levied on Korean washing machines was a breach of its agreement. Based on the latest and final ruling, the US is obliged to hold negotiations with Korean manufacturers Samsung and LG for compensation. Well, that's all we have for now on this rainy Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Next bulletin is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.